All right, Argent Alpha Unscripted. I think this is episode 5, if I'm keeping track correctly. And in
Yep.
in classic fashion, unscripted, we just decided about a half hour ago we're going to talk about protein. And in issue, I think number 153 of Harder to Kill, we talked about protein. And so my guess is we're going to go off in a lot of different directions. But let's zoom out before we talk specifically about protein. Let's talk about what a macro is. Let's talk about how macros and calories correlate. And then maybe let's just dive into protein and then why it's important for men over 50 to talk about. So, Clint, why don't you talk just a little bit about what's a macro? How does this fit in? What's a calorie? And you don't feel like you have to get sciencey because none of us are science guys. This is
Yeah.
practical information for guys over 50. So, but let me know what you're thinking about those topics.
Yeah. I mean, basic macros, proteins, carbs, and fats, right? The two we need are fats and protein to live. Carbs are not necessary. Good energy fuel. 4 grams, 4 calories per gram for protein and carbs, 9 calories per gram for fats. So fats obviously a higher calorie, more dense food. Protein is as we talk about is our foundation, right? Just muscle is life, building muscle, keeping eating protein. We tend to say 1 pound, 1 gram per pound of lean body weight for our protein. Some go up over. I tend to go a lot over just because the way I choose to eat. So, you know, getting that protein in is I'm going off on a tangent already, but getting that protein in is one of the opportunities for growth for most guys coming into the program, right? That most people don't understand how deficient or how little protein they're eating. So um, it's the first thing that we focus on, and getting your protein in early is key for the day, I believe. So um,
Yeah, so macros, without having to geek out, macros are just like the three things that food tends to be comprised of. And we
yes.
won't get into alcohol. Alcohol is a little different. Um, but one of the things you mentioned, so carbs, typically people think of carbs, they think of them as complex and simple. What's
Yes.
interesting when you talk about protein, protein doesn't get into any sort of distinguishing feature about the types of protein. And so you could see protein 5 grams in some beans, and you could see protein in a grass-fed ribeye. And I would suggest that you can survive on plant protein, but you thrive on animal protein, and because there are different types of proteins. And so, anyway, anything you guys want to add to that whole topic
Yeah.
as far as types of protein?
Oh, sorry, I was gonna go a different route with what you talked about with carbs and satiation and all of that. So the different types of protein. When talking with people about getting into nutrition side, hydration, protein, and then fiber. This one right here, carbs. So when I'm working with someone, we don't talk about carbs until way later on in the process. We talk about veggies because those the fiber that's what are those three things. I have a nutrition certification through Precision Nutrition, and that's really where we lead from there. And so, carbs is just like people don't have a problem finding extra carbs. It's like it's the one that you try to weed out. So I know we're talking about protein, but it always comes up right when I'm talking with folks on protein. Is just how are you structuring some of those other things.
No, that's a great point. I mean, I'll just use an airport. I just returned from a flight, and when you walk through an airport, it is a processed food laden, simple carb laden, crappy carb laden minefield. High quality protein,
Hmm.
you can't even really find it. And so when people start learning about macros, I think that's the step number one, and then learning about quality. What's a quality fat versus a low quality fat? A quality carb versus a low quality carb? A quality protein versus a low quality protein? And Peter Attia talks about this when he talks about these three levers of nutrition: quality, quantity, and timing. Clint, why don't you talk a little bit about the quality piece?
Hmm.
Because I know that's one thing I learned from you is let's start with quality first versus quantity and clean up things before we get into the amounts.
Yeah, super important. And in every airport, in every grocery store, they're filled with food-like substances. There's really no, at the base of them, it might have been a grain at some point, but there's really no food in them, right? So you see somebody eating a bag of Cheetos or whatever, there's no food in that, a cracker. It's almost just a filler, you know? So the quality is super important. Obviously, we go for, but Jag, you're always talking grass-fed, grass-finished, which we all agree with, organic, just quality food. Something single ingredient is most important, right? What we talk about in an alpha bowl and what we all try and eat is a single ingredient food mixed together in a bowl. Simple, organic, clean food.
Yeah, I want to come back to that Alpha Bowl because I think that's a
Yeah,
great sort of like how to put this into practice. I'm just going to take a note on that.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, so quality. Um, it's funny how people, when you think about other areas of their life, they might really emphasize quality when it comes to their car or the clothing they purchase. But when it comes to food, it tends to be cost driven. Like,
Mhm.
let's just say
Mhm.
a filet mignon. Well, filet mignon, no matter what, grass fed or grain fed, is a pricier cut of meat. But people tend to like want to go low cost, and it's crazy. This is the fuel. This is the number one drug you put in your body. It's how you fuel your
Yeah.
body. What have you guys seen in terms of this sort of irrational trade off of saving money versus quality of food?
Almost always cost effective and convenience. Like the convenience side of it, it's so much more convenient to find a crappy, less quality driven food for the most part, unless you know where to look, and how to find those things. But they can be found, but they're taking routes that you normally don't go to, like go to a grocery store instead of Chipotle, to go get something really quick and convenient, and like people don't think of that. They think of, oh, I go there and I automatically got to cook it. I mean, there's some pretty decent source things. You got to be careful where you go of things that are already cooked. And if you know what to look for and how to navigate around that.
100%. I mean, my head was going to your inputs equal your outputs, right? And our food is our fuel. I look at it as fuel, and what I input is what I'm going to get out. And like you said, Jack, a lot of people are going to put expensive inputs other places. But what's the saying? Somebody said a couple months ago, you know, your food is the only thing that shows, what you put in. It shows on the outside. I can't remember exactly
Oh
the
yeah,
saying.
what you eat in private, you wear in public.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, you can't hide it, So,
Yeah, shout out to Darren Nas for that quote.
yeah.
I remember we were sitting at a Caribou Coffee in Minnetonka, and he dropped that line. I'd never heard of it, and it was like, wow, that's so true. I mean, so imagine you're sitting at Culver's with a big old custard shake, a triple cheeseburger, and fries, and that guy who's eating that regular, you can imagine how that looks on the outside,
Yeah.
versus the meal planner who's eating high protein, high quality protein, good carbs and strength trains and what their body looks like. So there's definitely
Yeah.
a correlation there.
Brock, I love
And
what you said too about, just going into a grocery store or something. And this is something we've talked with a lot of our guys about, oh, I had no other option. I had to pull into Jack in the Box or McDonald's. Almost every corner where there's a fast food place, there's a grocery store, and you can stay on the outside aisles and once you start figuring it out, you can get the right thing. My wife and I, we can find that fun. We'll go out on an adventure and we'll go to Trader Joe's or Sprouts and like come up with a picnic, and it's just it's fun. So
so
Well,
go ahead if you want, Jake.
oh, I was just gonna say, you're right, Clint. There's always make um, the best selection you can given the environment you're in. So I was recently in a smaller town. There were no Whole Foods. There were no Trader Joe's. Although Trader Joe's, I'm putting on the naughty list. I think they have more crap in that store
they
now
do.
today
Yeah.
than ever. But a Sprouts like we have here in Arizona. And what's the best thing you can pick in a normal place? Well, you could go to the deli, and you could pick some lean turkey, buy a half pound of that, and just eat that. I mean, I know all three of us have done things like that where you go, well, I'm not going to eat the crap, the white processed flour that's enriched with all these fake things. I'm just going to get the meat. And is deli meat something we recommend to make a part of your staple of your diet? No. But in that kind of environment, lean meat is a way better option than eating the junk. And so this whole idea of like trading off things? Like, what's the best decision you can make given the environment you're in?
I would suggest on something like that, sorry, Brock, real quick, is everybody have a plan going in. So like when I'm out and about and I'm all of a sudden I got to eat, I already know what I'm going to go get at Sprouts or wherever I go, Whole Foods. I already know. I'm going there, I'm getting, X, X, and X. I put it together. Perfect. So have your plan ahead of time.
Another member I want to just call out, he's one of our best guys on travel, is a guy named Larry Pabuda.
Yes.
And Larry is the master of how to do travel, how to get better while you travel. So Larry, he knows where he's staying. He knows what the gym is like. He knows the equipment. He knows the restaurants. I would argue Larry knows today, when he's in Denver next week, he knows what he's going to have for dinner on a Tuesday.
Guaranteed, yeah.
So you can do this. Now, is that nerding out? Maybe, but what Larry's practicing is exactly what you're describing, is going with a plan, pre-decide, already make the decision so that you're not in the heat of the moment saying, well, maybe I'll have the cheeseburger and a couple pints while I sit at the bar, and that just leads you down the slippery slope.
And look at Larry. Everything he does is elite. His physical, he's elite physically, he's elite mentally, so perfect example, inputs.
Larry's in his 60s, walks around year round at 10% body fat. Probably is doing 15 pull-ups. The guy jumps rope, correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, probably 10,000 skips a week. I don't know. It's just some crazy number. So sorry, Brock, you were going to say something a little bit earlier.
Just on the quality side of it, that is most ideal in I think we would agree there to lean into ingredient foods, to find in grocery stores instead of some of the more processed options. In working with people to develop habits and routine and be consistent, that tends to be somewhat of a harder hurdle to jump over. It's not to say that you can't, and ideally if you can. Really, what are we going for with protein? Is to usually build muscle, right? Or to recomposize your body by torching fat by doing that. So get enough protein in, compounding that with strength training. And so an approach that if that is tending to be tougher for people to get into consistency with, is I go the opposite route of quantity and then bring in the quality side of it. Because you could still build muscle by getting the right quantity of protein, and then from there their body's used to consuming that, and then circling back for the quality side of it. So not to play devil's advocate, but that is typically what I do, is go with the quality side of it. And if we're just running into it and having a tough time building consistency, which I feel is pretty much the most important thing in anything that we're trying to develop change and habit, then go that, hey, let's get up to that quantity, and then we'll circle back through the quality, and then we'll come in through the timing side of it.
Brock, would you say quantity by using protein powders, protein bars, things like that first?
Yeah. Typically that. Getting to that number through okay, I had 2 protein shakes in a bar to get to the amount of grams of protein I wanted for the day. Okay, well, next week, how about we drop it down to 1 and 1, and then a couple weeks later, see if we can't get down to just one or the other, and then ideally we have our whole foods, supplementing all of that.
Right.
Yeah, I think what I hear you saying, Brock, is let's establish the habit of reaching your protein target first, and then we're going to get better at how we achieve that, through the choices we make,
exactly.
The quality of the food. So first, let's, for example, if a guy weighs 220 and his ideal body weight is 180, we'd like him to eat 180 grams of protein per day, his ideal body weight. So okay,
exactly.
Then they say, well, how do I do that? Well, let's just say it's 4 meals. So that's about 45 grams of protein on average per meal. And don't think of them as breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Think of them as meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, meal 4. Because when guys think breakfast, they think cereal, pancakes, bacon, eggs. It's that's probably not, that's a limiting approach to food. So, but hey, on that note, I want to back up just a little bit. So if somebody's listening to this and say, hey, why is protein important? Well, protein's important because that's what builds muscle. And there's a bunch of other benefits to it too. Then it's well, why is muscle important? Well, the greater your muscle mass, the greater your metabolism is, and the more your engine's burning hotter. Well, why is that important? Well, that correlates to improving your body composition, getting down to 15% body fat. Well, why is that important? people who have lower body fat percentages live longer. They suffer from chronic diseases less. And so every single cause of death, the risk of that drops for a man if you're at 15% body fat or less. I mean, to give you an example, the 25% version of me versus the 15% version of me, I can get across the street faster and avoid being hit by a car. That's harder to kill. And so that's an example.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get to 15% body fat, you're harder to kill. And why is that important? It improves your health span, the quality of your life, the quality of your years, and it may improve how many years you get, the lifespan. So that's just a quick backdrop of why protein. So let's talk a little bit about, we talked about this in the newsletter.
Can I touch on that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I touch on that real quick, Jake? The what he's talking about, the 25% version, 15% is body fat percentage. And so one thing that we use a ton here is our key metrics come off of the in-body scan. And so like building muscle, you look at the skeletal muscle mass side of that, like that is the one piece that affects every other thing on that scan. You get that, you build muscle, body fat or body weight drops down, body fat drops down, body fat percentage drops down, your basal metabolic rate, how many calories you're burning goes up, your visceral fat level comes down. So it's like we're looking at eating enough protein and strength training to get that skeletal muscle mass up there, and like it has an inverse relationship on all the other stuff that you want. Sorry.
No, that's right. And it's I mean, another way to frame that, well, if you don't buy into this, give me all the benefits of being weak and fat.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'll wait. I'll get my pen out. I'll
Still waiting.
Still waiting. Yeah. So as a man over 50, going into every year, maintaining your muscle mass, ideally stacking a thin layer on top of that, improving your functional movement, it just makes you harder to kill. The quality of your life goes up dramatically. So what we talked about in issue 153 was we talked about a floor and a ceiling. And anybody who wants to read in the details, they can go read that issue. But really what we're saying is every meal should have 40 grams of protein for a man over 50. Now you'll hear Dr. Gabrielle Lyon talk about 30 grams as the minimum level to trigger protein synthesis, I think is how she describes it. But when you're over 50, your body doesn't process protein as efficiently. And so we bumped that up from 30 to 40 to give you some cushion because our bodies are just not as effective as they used to be. So, 25-year-old Clint could burn through that same amount of protein way more efficiently than the current version of Clint 30 years later. And so that's the floor. So picture that those 3 or 4 meals a day, get 40 grams in their minimum. That's the floor. The ceiling, recent studies have shown that there is no ceiling. It used to be this sort of like 40, 50, or 60 grams max, depending on your body weight, was the most. Everything else you're eliminating. It's not giving you any benefits. Well, that's been debunked. And so now the ceiling is, we've got guys, Sean Dunn, another guy we'll give a shout out to. I mean, that guy will post some of the meals he eats and he'll hit 100 grams of protein in a meal. And, might be 3 eggs. It might be 8 ounces of grass-fed ground beef, some cottage cheese on the side. And all of a sudden he's at 100 grams. So once the light bulb switches on and, the switch flips and people go from like, how am I going to get to 50 grams? They're going over 200 grams in a day. And no shocker, their body comp improves, their blood work improves, their performance in the gym improves. And so if you walk away with anything here, put 40 grams of protein at the center of your plate. And to give you an idea, that's roughly, call it 6 to 7 ounces of animal protein. Will put you right about that 40 grams mark. And then after that, just high quality foods. Don't sweat it too much about starches, a potato, a sweet potato, and veggies. I mean, broccoli push you towards the veggie side because they have they're lower calorically and they have the fiber. But I think as a start, just get that protein at the center of your plate. No naked carbs. That's
it's interesting. Oh, sorry. A lot of the guys come in and they say, "How am I going to get that much protein?" Well, they're still eating a high caloric diet every day. Well, what else is on your plate? Why are you eating that potato? Why are you eating these things that are filling you up, but you're not getting your protein? So something to think about.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing too,
one other thing I'll add.
Yeah, go ahead.
That you kind of already touched on it a little bit, Jag, is front loading your day. Like in all the other habits we're talking about, the more that you get out of the way early in the day, the one, you don't have it hanging over your head, but then you also, in the nutritional sense, you get all of those benefits throughout the day. So front loading your first meal. Get that, that is a game changer for a lot of folks I work with, is just like pack in that first meal. Well, it doesn't have to be breakfast. It could be a little bit later in the day, but load that up. And then you're almost on coast mode the rest of the day there. And you have, your body is able to digest it all throughout the day, instead of like, hey, I had a huge dinner, and then you're sitting there with the meat sweats all night long. Like that's no fun either.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a, it's like everything. Win the morning, win the day, and it includes your protein goal. Hey, a couple landmines for guys to consider. Everything's high protein nowadays. I'm sure there's a high protein water out there. A high protein, Band-Aid.
Pop-Tart.
It's like everything's got protein in it. And a lot of those things are traps. For example, I'll use a natural food. Beans are marketed as high protein. They have more carbs than they do protein. So it's not really a high protein food. So they'll put on their 5 grams of protein, like that's a big deal. And I'm not saying don't eat beans. I'm just saying you're not going to get to your protein target eating beans and eating tofu and some of these other things. Like, are there exceptions? Yes, there are some exceptions. But eating high quality animal protein, grass-fed and grass-finished beef, wild-caught salmon, pasture-raised chicken, you pick your protein, you're going to get there way faster. It's way more satiating. And but just beware of protein bars and shakes and high protein chips. You see those out there. A lot of wolves in sheep's clothing when it comes to protein as you're building. Now, Brock might say like, hey, if it helps get your target, there's a place for it. That might be true, but I could just see a guy's shopping cart filled with packaged crap that says high protein on it. That might get you to your number, maybe, but then you're probably going to be at way higher in calories, and then you're gonna just blow the whole thing.
I think we go back to the beginning.
Yeah, you have to end up wading back through it. So like the best approach is quality first, for sure.
Yeah, so that goes back to the beginning, food like substance, right? Any protein bar is really a candy bar, and if you look at the ingredients and what the sugars are in it, things like that. So that's where I always go back to quality too.
Well, I just read a stat, and be careful of stats you read on Instagram and TikTok. You got to go fact check them. But they said something like 90% of the products in a grocery store today didn't exist like 50 years ago. It's something like that. Don't quote me on the numbers. But the whole point is, what happened to all the real food? Because I'll go back to my grandma used to work in a grocery store back in Foreman, North Dakota. And I remember going in there and like, it was, it's just like now that the outer rim was vegetables and fruit and the meat, the butcher shop and all that. And the grocery stores weren't that big. I mean, they didn't, because they didn't need to be. They weren't filled with all this packaged crap. And so you had meat and dairy and vegetables and grains, and the grains weren't sprayed with Roundup, which includes, it's glyphosate, which is a whole other topic. And so be careful when you go into these grocery stores, because there's a lot of, when you just look at it visually, it's colorful, but not nature's colors. It's packaged. Yeah. It's in squares. It fits on a shelf. I mean, this is not food. It is, like Clint said, it's food-like substances. And I'll go as far as to say it's actually poison. When you look at the obesity rates in America and the amount of people suffering from chronic disease, it's all, you could trace literally almost all of it back to the quality of food that's available in a grocery store. And it's just, it's robo fake food.
Yeah.
So
anyway. Palatable. It's designed for us to just OD on it, overdose and just keep going. And I know I'm guilty. So,
the old commercial Lay's potato chips, nobody can eat just one.
Yeah.
The asterisk should be because food scientists made it that way.
Right.
It's that's why you can't eat just one. So what else? What else do we when we talk about protein? We talked about the floor. We talked about a ceiling. We talked about a minimum at every meal. What else would you guys add to just help guy get started on hitting a protein target?
Just being consistent. Find it whatever that number is. So if you're like the example used earlier, Jig, of a 220-pound guy, ideal body weight's 180. 180 is the target, but let's say you're eating 80 right now. It's like to go from 80 to 180, that's a massive jump. But what if you split it in the middle, or took steps, over 4 to 6 weeks to build up to that, however your body can handle. I mean, you don't want to be eating to the point where you're just gorging yourself and miserable like to get to there. Let your body kind of tell you, okay, yep, I'm at 120 for right now is what I could do. Do that consistently. You do that consistently, it's going to be so much easier to go 130 or 140 or 150 even next week by being consistent instead of, yep, I hit 180, but then was back down to 80 and then up to 140 and then back down to 70. It's like stay steady, let your body kind of adapt to that and you'll be able to stack on.
That's so important, Brock. And one thing I'm thinking of is, and I'm sure the same for you guys. Well, I know it is for you guys. We tend to eat a lot of the same things because we know what they are, their quality. They're just, I eat almost the same thing every day, or it varies. And it never doesn't taste good is what I always tell my wife. Like, this never doesn't taste good. Because when you're eating clean whole food, it just tastes good, and I'm not sick of it yet. So
Well, let's end with each one of our own version of the Alpha Bowl. So I just had one. I showed it to Clint and Brock before we started. So my Alpha Bowl, that's our term for how to build. This is like guy food prep. No recipes. We don't do recipes. We don't do Mediterranean chicken piccata with lemon juice squeezed on it. That's some guys do. Nothing against those guys. So mine was at the base of the bowl was ground beef, just sautéed or cooked on the stovetop, 2 fried eggs on top with kind of over easy, so the yolk could be spun in there, 2 scoops of cottage cheese, and probably 2 forkfuls of sauerkraut on top of there, and just mix it all up. Tastes great, and I haven't done the math on it yet, but typically that bowl is around, if I get my math right, around 60 grams of protein, roughly. Clint probably is calculating his ends. Actually,
well, I am. You're probably at like, depending on how much, you're probably at about 500-600 calories in there, I would say.
So it's like for one of my meals now, if I do that 4 times a day, I hit all my numbers. And so the Alpha Bowl is a great way to just make it simple. Brock, what about you? What's in your Alpha Bowl?
Typically it's, you guys see me eating it on the start of every one of these here. It's usually a shredded chicken out of a Tupperware that I cooked. I'm a single guy, so I don't have all the fancy pieces. Normally I'm just grabbing them on the go, but it's chicken breast, chicken thighs, shredded up. Usually eat it cold out of a Tupperware, and then have some cottage cheese or yogurt with it, and usually an apple or some cucumbers or whatever I could grab as a veggie.
Brock doesn't even mix them together. He just eats them one at a time, just single food. That's what I see.
I love bowls, but I'm a grab and go on the fly.
Hey,
Convenience.
You're still crushing your macros.
Yeah, for sure.
How about you, Clint? What's in that bowl?
Oh, I'm the same. I'm no different. It's always a lean protein, either, lean a ground beef, a ground turkey, a turkey breast, anything like that. Eggs, cottage cheese, some fermented food, and always an avocado, half an avocado, like for some fats. Pairing protein and fat together keeps me satiated. And that's it all day long. If it has eggs on it, usually it's breakfast. Sometimes dinner will have eggs on it, but it's really not different, Lean protein, just garnished with cottage cheese or something like that.
Yeah, and it's funny.
You could tell by the way he's rattling it off, the conviction that comes. He's not making this up, people. This is real.
This is real. Sriracha, sriracha on that, all mixed together. It's never doesn't taste good.
You're making me hungry just listening to you.
And Clint's one of the only guys who uses sardines as a condiment.
Yeah, sardines and blueberries. It all works.
So anyway, if you guys want more details, go to the Harder to Kill newsletter. I've been waiting to say this. I'll put a link in the show notes. Every podcast has it. I'll put it in there, assuming I can figure out how to do it. You can do a deep dive on protein. We lay out a bunch of actionable guidance in there. And appreciate you guys tuning in. And we'll see you next week. So thanks. Have a good one. Talk to you guys soon.
See you guys.
See you guys.